The sound of flesh striking flesh echoed through Murphy's diner like a gunshot. William Stevens staggered backward, his weathered face contorted in shock. Coffee splashed across the worn linoleum floor quarters, scattered in all directions, glinting under the fluorescent lights. The 72-year-old veteran touched his burning cheek, where Marcus Johnson's hand had left its mark. "Know your place, old man," Marcus spat, towering over William, his construction worker frame casting a shadow across the small table. The diner fell into stunned silence, every patron frozen in place. Then, as if orchestrated, cell phones emerged from pockets and purses. Recording began. Maria Santos, the waitress who'd served William his coffee just minutes earlier, already had her phone out capturing everything. William Stevens straightened his posture, military bearing evident despite his age. The American flag pin on his carefully pressed cardigan caught the morning light. His hand didn't shake as he reached for his phone. Not from fear, not from anger. 25 years in naval special warfare had burned emotion out of crisis response. "You've made a serious mistake, son," William said, his voice steady, resonant with the authority of a man who had commanded others in combat. Marcus Johnson laughed, feeding off the attention of the silent diner. "Yeah, what are you going to do about it, Grandpa?" William didn't respond to the taunt. He simply scrolled to his contacts and pressed a name, Sarah, Director, Homeland Security. The phone rang twice. "Dad, is everything okay?" The voice that answered carried immediate concern and unmistakable authority. Every ear in Murphy's diner strained to listen. Every phone captured the moment. Security cameras recorded from multiple angles. "Sarah," William said calmly, "I'm fine, but there's been an incident at Murphy's diner in Millbrook." The blood drained from Marcus Johnson's face as comprehension dawned. His mouth opened, then closed. The word director echoed in his mind. "Dad, what happened? Who hurt you? I can have agents there in 20 minutes. Marcus Johnson, who had been so confident moments ago, suddenly looked like a man watching his life collapse in real time. The crowd of onlookers shifted, whispering now. Fire Chief Rodriguez stood up from his booth, approaching slowly. "Jesus Christ, Marcus," Rodriguez said. "Do you know what you just did?" 30 minutes earlier, Millbrook had been having a perfectly ordinary Tuesday morning. Murphy's Diner sat at the heart of Millbrook Population 3847, a small town that wore its history like a comfortable old coat. Steam rose from fresh coffee pots behind the counter. The smell of bacon, hash browns, and wheat toast filled the air, mingling with the familiar scents of farmers who'd come in straight from morning chores. They filled corner booths, discussing crop prices and weather forecasts with the same serious consideration their fathers and grandfathers had given these topics in the same booths decades earlier. William Stevens had moved to Millbrook 3 years ago after Sarah insisted he needed somewhere quieter than Baltimore for his retirement. He'd chosen Millbrook because it reminded him of the America he'd joined the Navy to protect in 1971. Small towns like this represented something timeless to him. At precisely 7:30 a.m., William pushed through the glass door of Murphy's Diner just as he did every Tuesday morning. His routine never varied. Black coffee, wheat toast, exact change counted from a worn leather wallet that had accompanied him across 4 continents and numerous classified operations. In 1975, Millbrook had been nearly identical to what William saw now, except for the cell phones and modern cars. The same American flag hung beside the counter. The same types of people occupied the same types of booths. William found comfort in this continuity. Maria Santos looked up from behind the counter and smiled. The Latina waitress had memorized his order long ago. "Morning, Mr. Stevens," she said warmly. "The usual, please, Maria," William replied with a nod. "Thank you." She poured his coffee without asking how he liked it. Black, no sugar, no cream. William was a simple man with simple needs, or so it appeared to anyone watching. What most people missed were the small details. The way he sat with his back to the wall, always facing the entrance. The precise way he folded his napkin. The American flag pin on his collar that never seemed to tarnish. The American Legion pin beside it, both positioned with military precision. What they couldn't see was the Purple Heart Medal hidden beneath his cardigan, awarded after an operation in Fallujah that remained classified even 20 years later. They couldn't see the 16 other medals locked in a case at home or understand the weight of the memories attached to each one. William's phone buzzed with a text message. Sarah, his only child, checking in as she did every morning. "Dad, big meeting with the cabinet today. Love you." William smiled and typed back slowly with one finger. "Proud of you, honey. Be safe." His daughter Sarah had followed him into service, starting with the Naval Academy, then military intelligence, before transitioning to Homeland Security, where she'd risen to become its director last year. William didn't fully understand what Sarah did each day, but he understood duty. It ran in their blood. Across the diner, Marcus Johnson sat in his corner booth, scrolling through social media on his phone. His construction crew uniform was clean this early in the morning, but his attitude had soured long before he'd entered the diner. He'd been watching William for months, resentment building each time the old man walked through the door. Marcus was third-generation Millbrook. His grandfather had helped build the town hall in 1952. His father had worked at the steel mill for 30 years before it closed, moving operations overseas. Marcus himself had expected to inherit a certain place in the town's hierarchy, a respect that came with deep roots. Instead, he'd watched as newcomers like William Stevens moved in, bringing change with them. The mill closure had devastated Millbrook's economy. Property values had plummeted. Marcus had been forced to sell his father's house at a loss. Meanwhile, developers were buying up cheap properties, planning to transform the town into something unrecognizable, something that would cater to weekenders from the city rather than families who'd lived here for generations. To Marcus, William Stevens represented everything that was wrong with the changing Millbrook. The old man's careful counting of quarters, his polite nods to other customers, his quiet dignity. It all seemed like a performance designed to mock people like Marcus, who were struggling to hold on to their identity. "Don't know why they let just anyone in here these days," Marcus muttered to his breakfast companion, loud enough for surrounding tables to hear. The businessman at the next table shifted uncomfortably. Mrs. Patterson, the mayor's wife, glanced up from her newspaper with a frown, but nobody said anything. They never did. Confrontation wasn't the Millbrook way, at least not in public. Maria's jaw tightened as she refilled coffee cups. She'd watched this pattern develop over months. Marcus's comments getting bolder, his jokes less funny and more pointed. She'd thought about saying something to her manager, but Marcus was connected to too many important people in town. Money talked louder than dignity in small-town diners. Outside the window, college student Tommy Carter was setting up his camera equipment. His assignment was simple: document real small-town America for his journalism class. He'd chosen Murphy's Diner because it looked authentic, timeless, the kind of place where honest people shared honest conversations. Tommy adjusted his lens and checked his audio levels. His professor had emphasized capturing genuine moments, unguarded interactions that revealed character. He had no idea he was about to document something that would reach the highest levels of American government. The security camera above William's table blinked its red recording light. The diner's owner had installed the system 6 months ago, after a rash of petty thefts. What he hadn't anticipated was how valuable that footage might become. What Tommy couldn't capture from outside was the conversation happening in the parking lot before Marcus entered the diner. Three men in work clothes speaking in lowered voices. "The old man's in there again," said Robert Dawson, a contractor who handled most of the town's development projects. "Acting like he owns the place. Someone needs to teach him a lesson about respecting the natural order," added Frank Miller, who owned the hardware store where Marcus bought supplies. Marcus nodded, glancing through the window at William Stevens calmly sipping his coffee. "Maybe that someone is me. These newcomers need to understand this is our town." What the three men didn't notice was Tommy's directional microphone accidentally picking up every word as he tested his equipment. Inside the diner, William's phone buzzed again. This time it was a news alert about federal funding for rural law enforcement programs. He read it carefully, then deleted it without comment. Some habits from his daughter's world had rubbed off on him over the years. Information security became second nature when your child worked in intelligence. William thought back to 1975 when he'd first joined the Navy. America had been changing then too, reeling from Vietnam and Watergate. He'd enlisted anyway, believing in something deeper than any temporary political climate. He'd believed in the Constitution he swore to defend, in the principles that survived flawed leaders and misguided policies. Now, in his 70s, he saw America changing again. Small towns like Millbrook becoming unrecognizable, divided between old-timers and newcomers. He understood Marcus Johnson's resentment better than the young man realized. Change was never easy. But William had seen too much of the world to believe that fighting change ever worked. Adaptation was the only viable strategy in combat or in life. Meanwhile, at Millbrook Town Hall, another meeting was underway. This one behind closed doors with no recording devices permitted. Mayor Thomas Thompson presided over the Millbrook Development Fund meeting, though no such organization appeared in any public record. Around the table sat Sheriff Patricia Hayes, several business owners, and real estate developer James Wilson from Philadelphia. "The growth corridor proposal requires us to consolidate certain properties along Main Street and River Road," Wilson explained, pointing to a map. "Current market value would make this prohibitively expensive, but if values were to decline further—" "Which properties specifically?" Thompson asked, though he already knew the answer. "These parcels," Wilson indicated several locations with red circles, "currently owned by newcomers. The Stevens property is of particular interest due to its position overlooking the river. Perfect location for the boutique hotel." Sheriff Hayes studied the map. "Some of these people won't sell willingly." Wilson smiled thinly. "That's where creative community management comes in. People sell when they no longer feel welcome, when small things make their lives uncomfortable. Nothing illegal, of course, just the natural response of a community protecting its heritage." The mayor nodded thoughtfully. "I understand. The council can fast-track zoning changes once the properties are secured." None of them knew that Mrs. Patterson, the mayor's wife, was standing just outside the door recording every word on her phone. Eleanor Patterson had grown increasingly disturbed by her husband's activities. 30 years of marriage had taught her to recognize when Thomas was involved in something unsavory. This wasn't about preserving Millbrook's heritage. This was about money, pure and simple. Marcus Johnson's breakfast companion had left for work, and he found himself with time to kill before his construction shift started. Time to kill, and a burning desire to confront the old man who represented everything he blamed for his diminished future. The morning crowd began to thin. Farmers headed to their fields. Office workers drove to their jobs in the county seat. The traveling businessman settled his check and left. Soon it would be just the regulars, the lingerers, and one old man who didn't know his peaceful Tuesday morning was about to become a nightmare. Maria glanced at her phone. A text from her cousin Tommy outside, getting great footage of authentic small-town life. This place is perfect. She looked out the window and waved. Tommy waved back, still filming. Neither of them realized they were about to become key witnesses to an assault that would go viral within hours. At 7:47 a.m., Tommy Carter positioned his camera for the perfect shot of small-town America. He had no idea he was about to capture evidence that would reach the director of Homeland Security's desk before lunchtime. At 7:45 a.m., Marcus Johnson's patience ran out. He'd been watching William Stevens for 15 minutes, and the old man's quiet contentment made his blood boil. Marcus stood up, work boots deliberately loud on the linoleum. He crossed the diner with calculated steps, drawing every eye in the place. William looked up as the shadow fell across his table. Marcus loomed over him, arms crossed, an expensive watch glinting on his wrist, incongruous with his worker's clothes. The watch had been a gift from Mayor Thompson after Marcus had helped convince an elderly shop owner to sell her property last year. No explicit agreement had been made, but Marcus understood his role in the changing Millbrook. "Morning," William said politely. "You seem real comfortable here," Marcus said loud enough for everyone to hear. "Real comfortable for someone who doesn't belong." The diner went silent. Forks stopped moving. Maria's hand moved toward her phone. Outside, Tommy adjusted his camera, sensing something important was developing. "I'm sorry," William said, genuine confusion in his voice. "This ain't your kind of place, old man. Makes decent people uncomfortable having your type around." Mrs. Patterson shifted nervously. Fire Chief Rodriguez tensed. The diner held its breath. William had faced far worse than playground bullies during his military career. But this was about dignity, about the right to exist in peace in a country he'd spent his life defending. "I'm just having coffee," William said quietly. "I'm not bothering anyone." "That's where you're wrong." Marcus leaned closer. "Your being here bothers me. Bothers a lot of good people." Outside, Tommy Carter's camera captured every word. He'd started filming local color. Now, he was documenting something much darker. The security camera recorded everything with perfect clarity. Audio-video timestamps that would become crucial evidence. William reached for his wallet to leave, but Marcus's hand slammed down on the table. "Don't walk away when I'm talking to you." Coffee sloshed. Quarters scattered across the table and hit the floor. "Sir, please," William said. "I don't want trouble." "Trouble." Marcus laughed without humor. "Old man, you are trouble. Everyone who moves here acting like you own the place." Maria pulled out her phone and started recording. She'd been silent too long. Rodriguez half stood unsure how to intervene. Mrs. Patterson looked around frantically. William stood slowly, military bearing evident, despite his age. Something in his posture made Marcus step back. Perhaps some primal recognition of a predator despite the cardigan and age. "I'm leaving now," William said with quiet dignity. But Marcus wasn't done. He'd started something in front of an audience. His pride wouldn't let him back down. Marcus stepped sideways, blocking William's path to the door. "You'll leave when I say you can leave." And physical intimidation, public humiliation witnessed by dozens and recorded by multiple cameras. Marcus Johnson had crossed a line that would destroy his life. Tommy Carter zoomed in his journalism training, recognizing something significant. He had no idea he was documenting an assault that would reach federal investigators. William Stevens stood trapped between the table and Marcus Johnson's bulk. The construction worker's chest puffed out, feeding off the attention from the silent diner. This was his moment, his chance to put someone in their place with an audience watching. "Please move," William said, his voice steady despite the situation. "Make me, old man." Marcus's lips curled into a sneer. "What you gonna do, call for help?" The taunt hit its target. William's jaw tightened, but his military training held. Never escalate. Never give them an excuse. But Marcus Johnson wasn't looking for excuses anymore. "You people think you can just waltz in anywhere," Marcus continued, his voice rising. "Think you own everything? Well, this is my town, and I decide who belongs." William stepped to the left, trying to go around. Marcus shifted to block him. "I said you're not leaving." That's when Marcus shoved him hard. William stumbled backward into the table. His hip caught the edge. Coffee cups crashed to the floor. The sound of breaking ceramic filled the diner like gunshots. "Hey!" Fire Chief Rodriguez stood up. "That's enough." But Marcus was just getting started. The shove had felt good. The power, the control, the way the old man's eyes had widened in shock. He wanted more. "Mind your own business, Rodriguez," Marcus snarled without taking his eyes off William. "Unless you want some too." Maria Santos raised her phone higher, making sure she captured everything. Her hands shook, but the video stayed steady. "Stop it, Marcus. He's done nothing wrong." "Shut up, Maria. You want to keep your job. You'll stay out of this." The threat silenced her words, but not her camera. She kept recording. William tried to steady himself against the table. At 72, a hard shove could mean broken bones, serious injury. But what hurt more than his hip was the humiliation. The way every person in the diner was watching him be degraded. "Now, you're going to apologize," Marcus demanded, "for making decent folks uncomfortable." "I apologize if my presence upset you," William said quietly. "But I've done nothing wrong." "Wrong answer." Marcus's face turned red. "If you upset me, you arrogant piece of—" The slap came without warning. Marcus's open hand cracked across William's cheek with brutal force. The sound echoed through the diner like a whip crack. William's head snapped to the side. His American flag pin caught the light as he staggered. Complete silence, then chaos. "Jesus Christ!" Rodriguez moved toward them. "Oh my God!" Mrs. Patterson gasped. "You asshole!" Maria screamed. Outside, Tommy Carter's camera zoomed in automatically. Inside, Maria's phone captured the perfect angle. The security camera recorded it all in high definition. William's hand went to his burning cheek. Blood trickled from where Marcus's ring had cut the skin. For a moment, the elderly veteran looked exactly like what he appeared to be, a helpless old man being brutalized by a thug. But then something shifted in William's posture. His shoulders straightened. His chin lifted. 72 years of dignity and military training kicked in. "You just made a serious mistake," William said quietly. Marcus laughed. "Yeah, what are you going to do about it, Grandpa?" William reached into his pocket, not for a weapon, for his phone. "I'm going to call my daughter." "Your daughter?" Marcus's laughter got louder. "What's she going to do? Come fight your battles." William scrolled to his contacts. The first name on the list, Sarah, Director, Homeland Security. But Marcus Johnson was too high on adrenaline and power to notice the phone. He was performing for his audience, drunk on control and applause that wasn't coming. "Hit me back, old man," Marcus demanded. "Come on, show everyone what you're really made of." Rodriguez stepped closer. "Marcus, you need to stop this right now." "For what?" Marcus spun around. "You gonna arrest me? For what? Teaching some respect." That's when William dialed. The phone rang once, twice. Then a voice answered. Dad, is everything okay? The diner went dead quiet. Something in that voice, that immediate concern, that authority. This wasn't someone's cousin or nephew. This wasn't some nobody. This was someone important. Sarah, William said calmly, I'm fine, but there's been an incident. Marcus Johnson's laughter died in his throat. Dad, are you hurt? Where are you? I can have agents there in 20 minutes. The voice came through William's phone speaker, clear and authoritative. Every person in Murphy's diner heard it. Every phone camera captured it. The security system recorded it all. Marcus Johnson's face went white. Agents, he whispered. No, Sarah, William said calmly into the phone. I'm not seriously injured, but I wanted you to hear about this directly before it hits the news. Before it hits the dad, what happened? Who hurt you? William looked directly at Marcus Johnson, who had gone from aggressive bully to statue in 5 seconds. A man named Marcus Johnson just assaulted me at Murphy's Diner in Millbrook. It's all been recorded. The silence in the diner was deafening. Sir, Maria approached William carefully. Is that really your daughter? William nodded. Sarah Stevens. She runs the Department of Homeland Security. Fire Chief Rodriguez slapped his forehead. Jesus Christ, Marcus! Do you know what you just did, Mrs.? Patterson gasped so loud it echoed. The Sarah Stevens, the director. Dad, I'm sending a protective detail immediately. Sarah's voice continued through the speaker. And our legal team will want statements from all witnesses. The word legal hit Marcus like ice water. His mouth opened and closed like a fish. His gold rings suddenly felt heavy on his fingers. His expensive watch seemed to tick louder. Oh, he whispered. Oh. Maria's Instagram Live exploded. The viewer count jumped from 50 to 200 to 800 to 3,000 in real time. Comments flooded the screen. OMG, is that the Homeland Security Director's dad? Marcus Johnson about to get destroyed. Screenshot everything. Someone's going to federal prison. Outside, Tommy Carter nearly dropped his camera. He'd been filming what he thought was small-town discrimination. Instead, he'd captured an assault on the father of one of the most powerful people in America. Dad, are the local authorities there yet? Sarah's voice cut through the chaos. Not yet, William replied. But Fire Chief Rodriguez is here. He's a witness. Rodriguez stepped forward, his face pale. Mr. Stevens, I saw everything. Marcus Johnson assaulted you unprovoked. Marcus found his voice panicking, making it crack. Wait, this is just a misunderstanding. No harm done, right, Mr. Stevens, sir. William looked at the man who'd called him garbage 5 minutes ago. The man who'd shoved him, slapped him, humiliated him in front of a room full of people. The harm was done when you assumed who I was based on how you perceived me, William said quietly. But I didn't know. I didn't know who your daughter was. And that makes it acceptable. Marcus's face crumpled. The reality was sinking in. He'd just committed a federal crime on camera against the father of the Director of Homeland Security. Tommy Carter's hands shook as he uploaded the raw footage to YouTube. His title, Shocking Man Attacks Director of Homeland Security's Father Live. The video would hit 50,000 views within the hour. Sarah's voice came through the phone again. Dad, I need you to know that federal investigators will be involved. This isn't because of my position. It's because what happened to you was a civil rights violation. Marcus Johnson sat down heavily in the nearest chair. His construction crew t-shirt was soaked with sweat. His face had gone gray. I'm sorry, he whispered. "I'm so sorry. I didn't mean. I never would have." "You never would have what?" William asked. "Assaulted me if you knew I had powerful connections. But you were perfectly fine, doing it when you thought I was powerless." The truth of it hit everyone in the room. This wasn't about mistaken identity. This was about character, about who you are when you think no one important is watching. Within 30 minutes, local police arrived at Murphy's Diner. Within 60 minutes, this local incident would be on the radar of federal investigators. But Marcus Johnson's troubles were just beginning. The video had already gone viral, and with it, the first threads of a conspiracy that went far beyond a simple assault were starting to unravel. Sheriff Patricia Hayes arrived at Murphy's Diner, her body camera recording everything. She'd known William Stevens for years as a quiet, regular customer. She'd also known Marcus Johnson as a troublemaker with connections to local contractors and politicians. The political calculations began immediately. "Morning, William." Hayes surveyed the scene, noting the broken coffee cups, the witnesses with phones out, the tension thick enough to cut. "Heard there was an incident." Maria stepped forward, phone still recording. "Sheriff Marcus Johnson assaulted Mr. Stevens. I got it all on video." Hayes reviewed the footage on Maria's phone. Her expression grew increasingly uncomfortable as she watched Marcus's aggressive language, the shove, the brutal slap. "Marcus, I'm going to need a statement." She turned to William. "Mr. Stevens, do you want to press charges?" William considered carefully. "I want this documented properly. Whatever happens next should follow the law." Meanwhile, the first news van pulled up outside, then another. Tommy Carter's video had hit 100,000 views. The hashtag #Millbrook Diner was trending regionally. Mayor Thompson called Hayes from City Hall. "Patricia, can we handle this quietly? Tourism season starts next month. Bad publicity could hurt everyone." Hayes lowered her voice. "Tom, this is the director of Homeland Security's father. There's no handling this quietly." "Jesus Christ, how bad is it?" "Bad enough that I'm expecting federal investigators by lunch." The real estate agent, who'd been eating breakfast, slipped out the back door, already texting his developer clients. "Property values about to tank. Pull all Millbrook listings." Local radio host Mike Stevens broke into regular programming. "Folks, we're getting reports of an alleged incident at Murphy's Diner this morning. Details are unclear, but witnesses claim a local resident assaulted an elderly customer. We'll bring you updates as they become available." The spin machine started immediately. Black SUVs appeared downtown 20 minutes later. Not for William, for security assessment. Standard protocol when a cabinet member's family was involved in any public incident. The regional news stations picked up the story by 10:00 a.m. Alleged assault at small-town diner involves family member of high-ranking federal official. Local man claims incident blown out of proportion by outside agitators. Federal civil rights investigators reportedly en route to Millbrook. The town began choosing sides. Team Justice grew rapidly. Maria's Instagram followers jumped from 800 to 15,000. Regional civil rights groups started making calls. Veteran organizations expressed outrage. The hashtag #RespectOurVeterans began trending. Team deflections circled the wagons. Local Facebook groups exploded with comments. "Small-town values under attack. Political correctness destroying America. Outside forces exploiting minor dispute." Marcus Johnson, advised by his hastily hired lawyer, released a statement through the local newspaper. "I sincerely regret any misunderstanding that occurred this morning. Mr. Stevens is a valued member of our community. Sometimes tensions run high in small businesses, and words get taken out of context." No mention of the physical assault, no acknowledgement of the aggressive language, No actual apology. The half-hearted statement only made things worse. William declined most interview requests, but agreed to speak with the regional news station. "This isn't about my daughter's position in government. It's about how we treat each other as human beings, how we see each other, whether we judge people by their character or their appearance." His dignity in the face of hostility made the story go viral faster. By noon, security experts were analyzing the camera footage. Clear evidence of premeditated assault. Aggressive language unmistakable. Textbook civil rights violation. Sheriff Hayes found herself in an impossible position. She couldn't bury this. Too many cameras, too much attention. But she also couldn't afford to alienate the local power structure that kept her in office. Her statement to reporters was carefully neutral. "Investigation ongoing. All parties are cooperating. We take any allegations of assault seriously." Translation: buying time, hoping it would blow over. It wouldn't. Corporate headquarters for Murphy's Diner chain issued their own statement: "We are investigating this morning's incident and do not condone discrimination or violence of any kind." Marcus's lawyer tried damage control. "My client maintains there has been a misunderstanding. The video footage has been taken out of context and doesn't show the full situation." But there was no context that made assault acceptable. By 2 p.m., Tommy Carter's video had reached 500,000 views. The comments section became a battleground. The local story was becoming a national symbol. What no one in Millbrook realized was that this incident was merely the first domino. As investigators began digging, they would uncover a pattern of harassment, intimidation, and corruption that reached from the diner all the way to town hall. The Millbrook Development Fund was about to face scrutiny it never anticipated, and William Stevens would become the unlikely catalyst for a small town's painful reckoning with its own demons. William sat in the hospital while a doctor examined the cut on his cheek. The physical pain was minimal. The emotional wound was deeper. For the first time since retiring from the Navy, he felt vulnerable. Not because of Marcus Johnson's actions, but because this incident had thrust him into a spotlight he'd spent decades avoiding. As a special operations veteran, William had lived in the shadows. His missions classified his achievements unrecognized publicly. Sarah had inherited that same instinct for operating behind the scenes. Now both father and daughter were about to be thrust onto the national stage, all because one man couldn't accept change. William thought about Sarah, about the pressure this would put on her, about the political dimensions this simple assault would take on because of her position. He felt a familiar weight settling on his shoulders, the weight of duty of decisions that affected others. His phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. "Protective detail en route. FBI Civil Rights Division opening preliminary investigation. I love you, Dad. Stay strong." William Stevens had survived firefights in Baghdad, covert operations in Somalia, and hostage rescues that remained classified. But as he watched the video of his assault spreading across America's phones and computers, he knew this battle would be different. This one would be fought in the open, with the entire country watching. And despite everything, despite the humiliation and pain, William Stevens felt a strange sense of purpose stirring within him. Perhaps this was why he'd moved to Millbrook after all. Not for a quiet retirement, but for one final mission he hadn't known was waiting for him. The video of William Stevens being slapped spread across America with the speed and force of a prairie wildfire. By sunset, major news networks had picked up the story. Their chyrons told the tale in stark, dramatic terms. Homeland Security Director's father assaulted in small-town diner. Veteran attacked, viral video sparks federal investigation. Millbrook divide, assault exposes small-town tensions. 6 hours after the incident, the video had accumulated over 2 million views. Tommy Carter's journalism professor called to congratulate him on capturing the story of the semester. Maria Santos had gained 30,000 followers on Instagram. William Stevens had received calls from 3 veterans organizations offering support and legal assistance. Marcus Johnson, meanwhile, had deactivated all his social media accounts and wasn't answering his phone. In Washington, D.C., Sarah Stevens stood in her secure office watching the footage for the 3rd time. Her father's dignified response made her proud, but seeing the red mark bloom across his cheek twisted something deep inside her. The protective instinct was almost overwhelming. She wanted to deploy every resource at her disposal to descend on Millbrook with the full might of federal authority. Instead, she took a deep breath and followed protocol. Personal involvement would compromise the investigation and provide ammunition to critics. She recused herself officially from any operational decisions regarding the Millbrook incident, then made one carefully considered phone call. "Jennifer, I need your team on this." Special Agent Jennifer Ramsey had served with Sarah in the Marines before joining the FBI. Now she led the Bureau's Civil Rights Division. Her reputation for absolute integrity was beyond reproach. "I saw the video," Ramsey replied, already assembling a team. "And Sarah, I understand the personal connection. We'll handle this by the book." "That's all I ask," Sarah said. "No special treatment, no shortcuts, just justice." After ending the call, Sarah texted her father, "Sending my best people. Trust them, love you." In Millbrook Hospital, William Stevens sat on the examination table while a doctor cleaned the cut on his cheek. The laceration was minor, requiring only butterfly bandages rather than stitches, but hospital protocol mandated a full examination for elderly assault victims. "You're in remarkably good shape for a man your age, Mr. Stevens," Dr. Reynolds commented, checking William's blood pressure. "Though your BP is running a bit high today." "Probably from the excitement," William replied with a wry smile. Dr. Reynolds nodded, but made a notation in the chart. "I'm also concerned about potential delayed reaction to trauma. At your age, physical assaults can trigger cardiovascular events hours after the incident. I'd like to keep you overnight for observation." William started to protest, but the doctor raised a hand. "There are also 2 FBI agents in my waiting room who'd like to speak with you. Staying here gives you a quiet, secure location for that conversation." "FBI?" William raised an eyebrow. "Sarah works fast?" "Your daughter didn't dispatch us, Mr. Stevens," said a voice from the doorway. A tall woman with short-cropped hair showed her credentials. "Special Agent Jennifer Ramsey, FBI Civil Rights Division. This is my partner, Special Agent Carlos Mendoza." Mendoza nodded respectfully. "Sir." "Civil Rights Division." William looked surprised. "I'm not sure I understand." Ramsey entered the room after a confirming nod from Dr. Reynolds. "The assault against you appears to be part of a pattern targeting newcomers to Millbrook. That potentially constitutes a federal civil rights violation. I assumed this would be handled locally." "Normally it would be," Ramsey agreed, "but certain elements caught our attention. The premeditated nature of the attack statements from multiple witnesses suggesting a coordinated effort to make outsiders feel unwelcome, and connections between your assailant and local officials." William processed this information. "You're suggesting this goes beyond one angry man in a diner." "That's what we're here to determine," Ramsey replied. "With your permission, we'd like to record a formal statement." While William gave his statement to the FBI agents, Maria Santos was facing her own crisis at Murphy's Diner. Her manager, a thin man named Howard, who rarely ventured from his office, had called her in for a discussion about this morning's incident. "You understand this puts the restaurant in a difficult position," Howard said, not meeting her eyes. Corporate is concerned about negative publicity. Maria crossed her arms. I recorded a crime. I was being a good citizen. You posted it online without authorization. That violates company social media policy. So you're firing me for documenting assault? Maria's voice rose. That video is evidence. Howard shifted uncomfortably. We're not firing you, just temporary administrative leave while we sort this out. Maria stood up, anger burning through her veins. Sort what out? Marcus Johnson attacked an elderly man in front of witnesses. There's nothing to sort out except his jail sentence. It's complicated, Howard muttered. Marcus has connections. His uncle is on the town council. The development group he works with brings a lot of business to Millbrook. And that makes assault okay? Maria grabbed her purse. Fine. I'll take your administrative leave. But understand this. I'm going to tell my story to every news outlet that calls. And they're already calling. As she stormed out, her phone buzzed with a notification. An email from ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, requesting verification of her citizenship status. Maria froze her hand, tightening around the phone. She had been born in Arizona. Her parents were naturalized citizens from Mexico. Her documentation was impeccable, but the timing wasn't coincidental. Someone was sending a message. Across town, Tommy Carter faced his own intimidation campaign. Returning to his small campus apartment, he found the door unlocked. Nothing was missing, but his laptop had been opened. On the screen was a single document, his academic transcript with each course grade changed to an F. The message was clear: continue filming, continue speaking out, and your academic career will suffer. Tommy immediately called campus security, then backed up his footage to multiple cloud servers. If they wanted to silence him, they'd have to try harder than digital threats. By early evening, Millbrook had transformed. News vans lined Main Street. Reporters conducted interviews outside Murphy's Diner. Social media buzzed with conflicting narratives about William Stevens, Marcus Johnson, and what the incident represented. Sheriff Hayes gave a carefully worded press conference on the courthouse steps, promising a thorough investigation, while emphasizing that the community shouldn't rush to judgment based on partial information. What the cameras didn't capture was her whispered conversation with Mayor Thompson immediately afterward. "The feds are here already," Hayes muttered. Civil Rights Division. 2 agents interviewed Stevens at the hospital. Thompson's face tightened. "That's fast? Too fast. Someone's pulling strings." "Or maybe assaulting a Purple Heart recipient on camera gets priority treatment," Hayes countered. "We need to distance ourselves from Marcus. Now. You know what this could do to the development deal." "I know what federal obstruction charges could do to my retirement plans," Hayes replied sharply. "Clean up your own mess, Tom. I'm following the law on this one." The mayor watched her walk away, then made a call to James Wilson, the Philadelphia developer. "We have a situation. The Johnson incident has attracted federal attention." Wilson's response was immediate and cold. "Handle it. That's what we pay you for." "These are FBI agents, not county inspectors. They can't be paid off." "Everyone has a price," Wilson said dismissively. "Or a pressure point. Find theirs." The call ended, leaving Thompson staring at his phone. 20 years as Millbrook's mayor, building toward the development deal that would secure his financial future, all threatened by Marcus Johnson's impulsive violence. Something would have to be done. At Millbrook Hospital, William Stevens was finishing his interview with the FBI agents when his phone rang. Sarah's face appeared on the screen. "My daughter," he explained to the agents. "Do you mind if I take this?" Ramsey nodded. "We have what we need for now. We'll be in touch tomorrow, Mr. Stevens." After the agents left, William answered. "Sarah, You didn't need to send the FBI. I didn't, his daughter replied. At least, not directly. The Civil Rights Division monitors social media for potential cases. When a Purple Heart recipient gets assaulted on camera with clear discriminatory intent, they move quickly. William sighed. This is becoming quite the spectacle. How are you really, Dad? Sarah's voice softened. Embarrassed, mostly. I didn't fight in 3 conflicts to end up as a viral video. The doctor said they're keeping you overnight for observation. William frowned. You spoke to my doctor. I'm still your daughter, even if I've recused myself from the investigation. There was a pause. Dad, there's something else. The FBI team found connections between Johnson and a development group that's been buying properties in Millbrook. Properties specifically owned by newcomers who've been driven out. You're saying this was more than a random confrontation. We don't know yet. But be careful. If this is systemic, other people may be involved. People with more to lose than Marcus Johnson. After speaking with Sarah, William tried to rest, but sleep proved elusive. The hospital room felt confining after years of active duty, followed by retirement in his spacious home overlooking the Millbrook River. The events of the day replayed in his mind. Not just the assault, but the reactions afterward. The silence of longtime diner patrons who watched without intervening. The careful political distancing by the sheriff. The media transformation of a personal humiliation into national news. William thought about his late wife, Catherine. She'd been gone 15 years now, cancer taking her just as Sarah was graduating from the Naval Academy. Catherine had been his moral compass, his link to the world outside the classified missions that consumed his career. She would have known exactly how to handle this situation with grace and wisdom. What would you do, Kate? He whispered to the darkened room. As if in answer, a memory surfaced. Sarah at 10 years old coming home from school with a torn dress and scraped knees. She'd stood up to a bully who was tormenting a smaller child. The bully had 3 older brothers, all of whom had threatened retaliation. Catherine had cleaned Sarah's scrapes while William paced the kitchen, furious that anyone would hurt his daughter. You can't fight this battle for her, Catherine had said quietly. I can make damn sure those boys never touch her again, William had responded. Catherine shook her head. And teach her that when things get tough, someone bigger will solve her problems, or that standing up for what's right only matters if you can win. William had stopped pacing. What then? Catherine turned to Sarah. Do you regret standing up for Jimmy today? The 10-year-old had considered this seriously, then shaken her head. No, he couldn't stop them by himself. Someone had to help. Even knowing what happened, you'd do it again? William had asked. Yes, Daddy. You always say that doing the right thing isn't about whether it's easy. It's about whether it's right. William had looked at his wife, who smiled gently. There's your answer. We don't shield her from the consequences of doing the right thing. We help her face them with courage. The next day, William had walked Sarah to school, but stopped at the corner. The rest of the way, you walk alone. Head high. I'll be watching, but no one will see me. Remember your training. Sarah had nodded solemnly, squared her small shoulders, and walked toward the school gates, where the bully and his brothers waited. William had watched from a distance, every muscle tense, ready to intervene if necessary. But it hadn't been necessary. Sarah had walked straight up to the group, said something William couldn't hear, and extended her hand. After a moment of confusion, the oldest brother had shaken it. The tension dissolved. Later, Sarah explained she had offered to teach them the self-defense moves her father had shown her in exchange for leaving Jimmy alone. Fighting wasn't the solution, she'd told William proudly. Communication was. Now in the hospital room, William smiled at the memory. His daughter had learned that lesson well, rising through military and government ranks by combining strength with diplomacy. Perhaps that approach would serve here too. William's contemplation was interrupted by a soft knock at his door. A nurse entered with medication and checked his vital signs. "Your pressure's still elevated, Mr. Stevens. Try to rest." After she left, William closed his eyes, but his military instincts detected a presence in the doorway. He looked up to see Fire Chief Rodriguez, standing awkwardly still in uniform. "Chief Rodriguez, this is unexpected." Rodriguez entered, removing his hat. "Call me Miguel. I wanted to check on you, and to apologize for not stepping in sooner at the diner." "You did step in," William countered, "more than anyone else." Rodriguez shook his head. "Not soon enough. And now?" He glanced over his shoulder before continuing in a lower voice. "Things are happening. Maria got suspended from her job. Tommy's apartment was broken into. My deputy chief received a notice that the department's budget review has been accelerated." "Intimidation," William said flatly. "This goes beyond Marcus Johnson," Rodriguez confirmed. "I've lived in Millbrook my whole life. Never saw this side of it before." "What changed?" "Money. The Riverfront Development Project. Outsiders bringing in big investment, but only if certain properties can be acquired." Rodriguez twisted his hat in his hands. "Your property being one of them." William absorbed this information. So Marcus's attack wasn't random. "I don't think Marcus knew the whole picture. He's a foot soldier, not a general." Rodriguez placed his hat back on his head. "Just watch your back, Mr. Stevens, and maybe check your home security when you get out tomorrow." After Rodriguez left, William reached for his phone, then hesitated. Calling Sarah would only worry her, and she'd already recused herself from the investigation. Instead, he texted Maria Santos, "Heard about your suspension. Lawyer up. I'll cover the costs." Her reply came quickly, "Not just suspended. ICE sent citizenship verification request. I was born in Arizona." William frowned. Targeting Maria's immigration status was a particularly vicious form of intimidation. He sent another text, "Document everything. Don't engage alone with authorities without representation." Sleep remained elusive as William considered the expanding implications. This wasn't just about a confrontation in a diner anymore. Someone had orchestrated a systematic campaign to drive outsiders from Millbrook using intimidation, economic pressure, and now, apparently, government agencies. The question was, who had that kind of influence? Morning brought additional complications. Dr. Reynolds arrived early, concern evident on his face. "Mr. Stevens, your blood work shows elevated cardiac enzymes. I'm concerned you may have experienced a mild cardiac event overnight." William felt fine, but decades of military service had taught him to respect medical expertise. "What does that mean for my release?" "I want to keep you another day for monitoring and additional tests." Reynolds checked the monitors. "Your blood pressure remains concerning." William nodded acceptance, then asked, "Doctor, has anyone inquired about my condition? Anyone official?" Reynolds hesitated. "The sheriff called this morning asking if you were well enough to give a formal statement at the station." "I already gave a statement to the FBI." "That's what I told her." Reynolds made a notation on William's chart. "She seemed disappointed that you wouldn't be leaving today." After the doctor left, William texted Agent Ramsey about the sheriff's inquiry. Her response was immediate. "Don't go to the station alone. We'll send an agent to accompany you when you're released." The morning news showed that Millbrook's division had deepened overnight. A group of protesters had gathered outside Murphy's Diner, holding signs reading, "Justice for Stevens," and "Veterans deserve respect." A counter-demonstration formed across the street, their signs proclaiming "Support local values" and "Millbrook Strong." Local news interviewed residents with carefully balanced perspectives. "Marcus has always been hot-headed, but he's not a bad guy," said Frank Miller, the hardware store owner. "This is being blown way out of proportion." "If someone assaulted your grandfather, would you think it was blown out of proportion?" countered Jessica Alvarez, a high school teacher. "This isn't about politics. It's about basic human decency." National coverage framed the story differently. The Millbrook incident highlights growing tensions in rural America, where changing demographics and economic pressures create friction between established residents and newcomers. Sources suggest federal investigators are examining potential civil rights violations in what appears to be a coordinated campaign targeting specific residents. By mid-morning, Williams' hospital room had become an impromptu command center. Agent Mendoza arrived with a laptop setting up in the corner. "Agent Ramsey sent me to provide security and assistance," he explained. "We've had reports of potential intimidation against witnesses." William raised an eyebrow. "Am I under protection or surveillance, Agent Mendoza?" Mendoza smiled slightly. "Let's call it professional courtesy. We protect our witnesses, especially those with distinguished service records." William's phone buzzed continuously with messages from veteran organizations, media outlets, and concerned friends from his military days. He replied selectively, declining most interview requests and thanking the veterans groups for their support. A text from Tommy Carter caught his attention. "Mr. Stevens, someone broke into my apartment last night. Nothing stolen but clear intimidation. FBI taking statement now. Just FYI, I'm not backing down." William showed the message to Mendoza, who nodded grimly. "We're aware. Agent Ramsey has assigned protection to key witnesses. The pattern of intimidation actually strengthens our case." "What case exactly?" William asked. "This seems to be expanding beyond a simple assault." Mendoza considered his words carefully. "We're investigating potential RICO violations, racketeer-influenced and corrupt organizations. The assault appears connected to a broader pattern of property acquisition through intimidation, potentially involving public officials." "That would explain the coordinated response," William mused. "Sheriff, mayor, business owners, all moving in lockstep to contain the situation." "Exactly. And now that federal investigators are involved, they're escalating pressure on witnesses." Mendoza typed something on his laptop. "Which tells us we're on the right track." William stared out the window at the news vans still parked in the hospital lot. "I never wanted this spotlight. I moved to Millbrook for a quiet retirement." "Sometimes we don't choose our battles, sir. They choose us." The words echoed William's own thoughts from countless missions. How many times had circumstances thrust him into conflicts he hadn't anticipated? The difference was that those operations had been conducted in shadows with the protection of classified status. This battle was playing out on national television with his face as its symbol. Around noon, William received an unexpected visitor. Mrs. Eleanor Patterson, the mayor's wife, entered his room after a brief exchange with Agent Mendoza. "Mr. Stevens," she said, closing the door behind her, "I hope you're recovering well." William studied the elegant woman carefully. "Mrs. Patterson, this is a surprise." She glanced at Mendoza, who remained by his laptop in the corner. "I was hoping we might speak privately." "Agent Mendoza stays," William said firmly. "Given recent events, I'm sure you understand the precaution." Eleanor nodded, then reached into her purse and extracted a small recording device. "In that case, you should both hear this." She placed the device on the bedside table and pressed play. Mayor Thompson's voice filled the room along with another man's unfamiliar tone. "The Stevens property is critical to Phase 2. Riverfront access, unobstructed views. Perfect for the hotel. He's not selling, Tom. We've tried offering above market. Then we create market conditions that change his mind, like the others. Johnson's eager to help. Says the old man disrespects him at the diner. Marcus is useful but volatile. Make sure he understands. Pressure, not violence. We need deniability. Eleanor stopped the recording. That conversation took place 3 weeks ago between my husband and James Wilson, the developer from Philadelphia. I have more recordings documenting the entire conspiracy. William and Mendoza exchanged glances. "Why are you sharing this, Mrs. Patterson?" William asked. "Because I've watched my husband change from a man who wanted to serve this town into someone willing to destroy lives for profit." Her voice remained steady, but her hands trembled slightly. "And because what happened to you wasn't random. It was orchestrated." Agent Mendoza leaned forward. "Mrs. Patterson, would you be willing to provide these recordings to the FBI as evidence?" "That's why I'm here." She placed the device and a USB drive on the table. "Everything is here. Meetings, phone calls, the entire conspiracy to acquire properties by driving out undesirable residents. My husband doesn't know I have these recordings." "This is significant evidence," Mendoza said, taking the drive, "but also potentially dangerous for you. Your husband and his associates will know the source." Eleanor smiled thinly. "Agent Mendoza, before I married Thomas Patterson, I worked for the Central Intelligence Agency during the Cold War. I can protect myself." After she left, Mendoza immediately contacted Ramsey, describing the new evidence. William sat back against his pillows, processing the implications. The harassment campaign against Millbrook's newcomers wasn't just bigotry or resistance to change. It was a calculated business strategy. By mid-afternoon, William's condition had stabilized enough that Dr. Reynolds reluctantly approved his discharge for the following morning. "Your cardiac enzymes have normalized, but I'm still concerned about your blood pressure," the doctor cautioned. "You need to avoid stress." William almost laughed at the impossibility of that recommendation. "I'll do my best, doctor." As evening approached, Agent Ramsey arrived to brief William and Mendoza on investigation developments. "Mrs. Patterson's recordings are gold," she began without preamble. "They document conspiracy obstruction and potential civil rights violations involving the mayor developers and several business owners." "What about Sheriff Hayes?" William asked. "No direct evidence yet, but we're investigating financial connections between her campaign and the development group." Ramsey placed her tablet on the bed tray. "There's something else you should see." She played a video clip from social media. A group of elderly men in military veteran caps had formed a protective line around Maria Santos as she removed her belongings from Murphy's diner. The veterans stood silent, dignified, as Maria carried boxes to her car. News cameras captured everything. "Veterans from neighboring counties," Ramsey explained. "They organized this after hearing Maria was suspended for recording your assault. It's gone viral. Another 2 million views since this afternoon." William felt a complex emotion watching these fellow veterans, most his age or older, standing in solidarity with Maria. Pride in their brotherhood, but also concern about escalating tensions. "The town is polarizing," he observed. "Rapidly," Ramsey agreed, "which plays into our investigation timeline. We need to move quickly before this becomes even more volatile." William considered his options. "I'm being discharged tomorrow. I should check my house, make sure it hasn't been tampered with during my absence." "Oh, we've had agents monitoring your property," Ramsey assured him. "No attempted entry, though there have been drive-by observations from vehicles registered to associates of Mayor Thompson." The conversation was interrupted by William's phone ringing. The display showed Sarah's number. "My daughter," he explained, answering the call. "Sarah." Her voice came through strained professional. "Dad, I've just been briefed on case developments. I'm still recused from operational decisions, but I needed to check on you directly. I'm being discharged tomorrow. Everything's fine." "That's not what I'm hearing." Sarah's tone sharpened. "There's evidence of a coordinated intimidation campaign against witnesses. Maria Santos received an ICE inquiry. Tommy Carter's apartment was breached. Fire Chief Rodriguez is facing budget review threats. Agent Ramsey's team is handling it." "Dad," Sarah paused, "these people targeted you because they thought you were vulnerable and alone. Now they know you're not. That makes them more dangerous, not less." William recognized the concern beneath her professional demeanor. "Sarah, I spent 30 years handling sensitive situations. I'm not going to do anything rash. Promise me you'll maintain protection. These aren't just angry townspeople. This is organized criminal activity." "I promise," William assured her. "Agent Mendoza is with me now, and Agent Ramsey's team is monitoring the situation." After ending the call, William noticed both FBI agents watching him carefully. "Your daughter is right to be concerned," Ramsey said. "This case has evolved beyond what we initially anticipated." William nodded, then changed the subject. "Tell me about Marcus Johnson. Has he been charged?" "Not yet. His lawyer is negotiating surrender terms. Johnson is apparently willing to provide information about the broader conspiracy in exchange for consideration." "He's turning on the mayor." "Self-preservation," Mendoza commented. "Classic pattern once these schemes start unraveling." The night passed quietly, but William slept fitfully. Hospital rooms never conducive to rest, especially for someone accustomed to maintaining situational awareness. Each time a nurse entered to check vital signs, he woke instantly, fully alert. During one such check around 2 a.m., the nurse mentioned casually, "There's been a lot of activity tonight. Police cars coming and going." William raised an eyebrow. "Here at the hospital?" "At the sheriff's office across the street. Lights on all night, which is unusual. Thought you might know something with the FBI agent outside your door and all." William didn't respond, but after she left, he texted Mendoza, who was taking a break in the waiting area. "Police activity at sheriff's office. Might be relevant." Mendoza replied immediately, "Aware. Monitoring. Nothing concerning yet." Morning brought clarity to the nighttime activities. Local news reported that Sheriff Hayes had executed search warrants on 3 properties connected to the Millbrook Development Fund, including Mayor Thompson's home office. The official statement described this as part of an ongoing investigation into allegations of public corruption. Agent Ramsey arrived early, bringing William's discharge papers and a change of clothes Sarah had sent via courier. "Sheriff Hayes contacted us at midnight," she explained, as William dressed behind a privacy screen. "Apparently, Mrs. Patterson approached her with copies of the same recordings she gave us. Hayes decided to act immediately independent of our investigation." "She's distancing herself from the conspiracy," William deduced, "and establishing herself as part of the solution rather than the problem," Ramsey agreed. "Political survival instinct. But it works in our favor. The local warrants give us additional evidence without federal involvement, avoiding any appearance of overreach." William emerged dressed in his own clothes rather than the hospital gown. The familiar weight of his wallet and keys provided a welcome sense of normalcy. "What happens next?" he asked. "We take you home, ensure your property is secure, and continue building our case. The U.S. Attorney will determine charges based on our evidence." The hospital discharge process took another hour. When William finally emerged through the main entrance, he was surprised by the scene that greeted him. A group of about 30 people, many elderly and wearing veteran caps or insignia, stood in a respectful formation near the hospital doors. As William appeared, they straightened to attention. A man William's age, wearing a Marine Corps cap, stepped forward and saluted. "Master Chief Stevens, Jack Nelson, Marine Corps, retired. We thought you might appreciate an escort home." William returned the salute automatically. "Chief Nelson, this isn't necessary." "With respect, sir, we disagree." Nelson gestured to the assembled veterans. "Word travels fast in the Brotherhood. When one of our own gets targeted, we respond." William recognized the determination in these men's eyes. They weren't there for the cameras or public attention. They were there because decades ago they had sworn the same oaths he had formed by the same crucible of service. "I appreciate the support," William said simply. Nelson nodded, understanding the understatement. "We've arranged a protective detail for your property. Rotating shifts, professional surveillance, all former military or law enforcement." Agent Ramsey stepped forward. "While we appreciate the sentiment, civilian involvement could complicate the investigation." Nelson turned to her. "Ma'am, with all due respect, we're not civilians. We're veterans exercising our right to visit a comrade. If we happen to notice suspicious activity while visiting, we'll report it through appropriate channels." Ramsey recognized the careful phrasing. These veterans knew exactly what they could legally do without interfering with federal jurisdiction. "Just maintain appropriate distance from active investigation scenes," she conceded. The drive to William's home took them through downtown Millbrook, where the division in the community was starkly visible. News crews filmed from street corners. Small groups gathered holding signs expressing support for either William or the traditional values faction. Police officers stood at major intersections, maintaining order. William's house sat on a hillside overlooking the Millbrook River, a modest but well-maintained property with a wraparound porch and large windows facing the water. As they approached, William immediately noticed surveillance equipment positioned discreetly around the perimeter. Not his installations. "FBI additions," Mendoza explained, following his gaze. "Cameras, motion sensors, cellular backup systems in case your internet or power is compromised." Inside, William found everything untouched, but not undisturbed. The subtle signs that strangers had carefully examined his home were evident to his trained eye. Cushions not quite at the right angle. Books aligned too perfectly on shelves. The faint scent of unfamiliar aftershave lingering in his study. "Someone's been here," he noted quietly to Ramsey. "Professional search, not a break-in." She nodded. "We suspected as much. Our technical team swept for surveillance devices yesterday. Found 3. Audio in the kitchen, video in the living room, audio, video in your study. All removed. Removed and traced. Purchased through a shell company connected to the development group." William walked to his study window, gazing out at the river view. The same view that made his property critical to Phase 2 of the development plan. The reason he had become a target. "They want this land badly," he murmured. "The entire riverfront," Ramsey confirmed. "Your property is the cornerstone. Without it, the hotel complex can't proceed as designed." William turned from the window. "What about Maria and Tommy? Are they safe?" "Maria is staying with relatives in the next county. Tommy remains on campus with security arrangements. Chief Rodriguez has taken personal leave, but remains in contact with our team." As the day progressed, William received regular updates from Agent Ramsey. Marcus Johnson had surrendered to federal authorities and begun providing information about the development scheme. Mayor Thompson had issued a statement temporarily stepping back from official duties to address personal matters. 3 members of the town council had suddenly announced urgent out-of-state travel plans. The conspiracy was unraveling rapidly, but William felt no satisfaction. This wasn't the Millbrook he had chosen for retirement, a community tearing itself apart over property values and development plans. The divisions now exposed would take years to heal, if they ever did. Late afternoon brought an unexpected development. William's doorbell rang, and security cameras showed Maria Santos standing on his porch, accompanied by Tommy Carter and Fire Chief Rodriguez. William invited them in, offering coffee, which Maria insisted on preparing herself, since I'm apparently unemployed now. Despite her attempt at humor, the strain of recent days showed clearly on her face. "We wanted to check on you," Rodriguez explained, "and to update you on community developments." Tommy set up his laptop on the kitchen table. "I've been documenting everything. The veterans' response has been amazing. They've organized support for everyone targeted by the development group." He played video clips showing veterans helping an elderly Hispanic couple whose landscaping business had lost municipal contracts after they refused to sell their property. Another clip showed veteran-organized security patrols in neighborhoods where outsider families had reported harassment. "They're calling it Operation Community Shield," Tommy explained, self-organizing through veteran networks across 3 states. William watched silently, conflicting emotions washing through him. Pride in his fellow veterans' response, concern about vigilante justice, uncertainty about Millbrook's future. Maria placed a coffee cup in front of him. "There's something else you should know. Murphy's Diner corporate headquarters called me personally. They've terminated Howard and offered me his management position with a public apology and back pay." "Damage control," Rodriguez suggested. "Of course," Maria agreed. "But it means I can rehire the other staff who were pressured to keep quiet about what happened." The conversation continued as they shared information and experiences from the past 48 hours. William listened more than he spoke, observing the resilience in these 3 people who had stood for principle despite personal cost. As evening approached, Rodriguez checked his phone and frowned. "Sheriff Hayes has called a town meeting for tonight. 7 p.m. at the community center." "Why?" William asked. "Public transparency about the investigation according to the announcement. But the timing seems suspicious." William considered this development. "I should attend." "Absolutely not," Maria protested. "It could be a setup." "Or an opportunity," William countered. "The community needs to see this situation firsthand, not filtered through competing narratives." Tommy leaned forward eagerly. "If you go, I want to film it. Document everything." Rodriguez looked unconvinced. "At least let me arrange security. Some of the veterans would volunteer immediately." William shook his head. "No security beyond normal law enforcement. No special treatment. I'm just a citizen attending a public meeting." After his visitors left, William called Agent Ramsey to inform her of his decision to attend the town meeting. Her response was predictably cautious. "This could be an attempt to control the narrative," she warned. "Hayes may be trying to position herself as the authority addressing the situation, minimizing federal involvement." "All the more reason for me to be present," William replied. "I'm not going to confront anyone or make statements, just observe." "We'll have agents present," Ramsey said after a pause, unmarked blending with the crowd, just as a precaution. As William prepared to leave for the meeting, his phone rang. Sarah's name appeared on the screen. "Dad," she said without preamble, "Agent Ramsey tells me you're planning to attend a town meeting tonight." "That's right." "Is that wise?" "The situation remains volatile." William smiled at his daughter's careful, professional tone. Even in personal conversations, the Director of Homeland Security maintained operational security. "Sarah, do you remember when you were 10 and that bully was harassing Jimmy Cooper at school?" A moment of silence then. "Of course. You taught me to stand my ground. I also taught you that sometimes presence alone is power. Sometimes just showing up standing tall changes the dynamic. This isn't a schoolyard, Dad. These people orchestrated a campaign to drive you out of town. And they failed, William said simply. Now they need to see that failure in person, not for revenge or humiliation, but for accountability. After a long pause, Sarah sighed. You always were stubborn. Mom said it was your best and worst quality. She was usually right. Be careful, Dad. I love you. Love you too, honey. William hung up and checked his appearance in the hallway mirror. He straightened his collar, adjusted his American flag pin, and made sure his Purple Heart was visible on his cardigan. Then he drove toward the Millbrook Community Center, where the town was gathering to confront its demons. The parking lot was already full when William arrived. News vans lined the street, their satellite dishes reaching skyward. Reporters recognized him immediately, shouting questions which he acknowledged with a polite nod, but no comment. Inside the community center's main hall was packed beyond capacity. Chairs arranged in neat rows faced a small stage where Sheriff Hayes stood with several deputies. Mayor Thompson was notably absent. The crowd's murmur quieted as William entered, heads turning, conversations pausing. William took an empty seat in the middle of the room, not hiding, not prominently displaying himself either. Just a citizen at a town meeting. Tommy Carter positioned himself nearby, camera recording. Maria and Rodriguez sat together several rows back. Agent Ramsey and Mendoza blended with the crowd, identifiable to William only through subtle professional signals. Sheriff Hayes cleared her throat, calling the meeting to order. Thank you all for coming tonight. As you know, our community has experienced significant events over the past 48 hours. William listened calmly as Hayes outlined the situation in carefully measured terms, describing an investigation into alleged improprieties involving town officials and the development group. She mentioned the search warrants executed at Mayor Thompson's residence and offices the voluntary statement provided by Marcus Johnson and her department's commitment to complete transparency. What she didn't mention was William Stevens by name, or the assault that had triggered the investigation, or the systematic intimidation of newcomers to Millbrook. Those omissions spoke volumes. When Hayes opened the floor for questions, the first came from an elderly woman William recognized from Murphy's Diner. Sheriff, you're talking around the real issue. Marcus Johnson attacked William Stevens because he was part of a conspiracy to drive out new residents and take their properties. When will you acknowledge that? Hayes shifted uncomfortably. The investigation is ongoing. I can't comment on specific allegations. Another resident stood. My family moved here last year. Our windows have been broken twice. Our children harassed at school. When we complained, your deputies said it was probably just kids being kids. Was that part of the conspiracy too? I assure you, any connection between isolated incidents and broader patterns will be thoroughly investigated, Hayes replied mechanically. The questions continued, increasingly pointed. Community members recounted similar experiences: harassment, selective enforcement, economic pressure against newcomers who refused to sell properties in the development zone. William remained silent, observing. This wasn't his battle to lead. The community itself was finding its voice, connecting previously isolated incidents into a recognizable pattern. The truth was emerging organically, more powerful than any statement he could make. Finally, an older man in the back stood up. I'd like to hear from William Stevens himself. He's here tonight. Sir, would you share your perspective? All eyes turned to William. The room fell silent. Camera lenses focused. This was the moment the media had been waiting for. The victim's statement, the emotional centerpiece for their coverage. William stood slowly, the military-bearing automatic after decades of service. He looked around the room, meeting the eyes of longtime residents and newcomers alike. Then he spoke, his voice quiet, but carrying clearly through the hushed hall. I moved to Millbrook because it represented something I spent my career defending, a community where people look out for each other, where differences are respected, where the rule of law matters more than the rule of money. He paused, letting the words settle. What happened to me at Murphy's Diner wasn't just about one man's anger. It was about a system that decided some people belong and others don't, that some voices matter and others should be silenced. William touched the Purple Heart on his cardigan. I didn't earn this fighting for a divided America. I earned it fighting for a country where justice matters, where truth matters, where we stand together against those who would use fear to control us. He looked directly at Sheriff Hayes. This investigation isn't about me. It's about Millbrook deciding what kind of community it wants to be. One built on intimidation and exclusion, or one built on the principles this country was founded upon. William sat down. The room remained silent for a long moment, then erupted in applause. Not universal. Some sat with arms crossed, expressions hardened, but enough to signal that Millbrook's conscience had been awakened. Sheriff Hayes attempted to regain control of the meeting, but the dynamic had shifted irrevocably. Community members continued sharing experiences, connecting dots, demanding accountability. The facade of isolated incidents collapsed completely. As the meeting concluded, William made his way toward the exit, accepting handshakes and words of support from residents he'd never met before. Outside reporters clustered, calling questions, cameras flashing. William stopped briefly. I have no statement beyond what I shared inside. This isn't about me. It's about a community finding its way back to its core values. As he walked toward his car, William noticed a figure standing in the shadows of the parking lot. Marcus Johnson, shoulders slumped, watching silently. Their eyes met briefly across the distance. William gave a single dignified nod, not forgiveness but acknowledgement. Then he drove home. That night, as William prepared for bed, his phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. Saw your speech online. Mom would be proud. William smiled, knowing she was right. Catherine had always valued moral courage above physical bravery. Standing up in that meeting, speaking truth to power, was exactly what she would have expected from the man she married. As he drifted toward sleep, William reflected on the unexpected turn his retirement had taken. He had sought quiet anonymity in Millbrook, a respite after decades of classified operations and personal sacrifice. Instead, he had found himself at the center of a very different kind of battle, one fought with words and principles rather than weapons. Perhaps this was why he had been drawn to this small town, not for escape, but for one final mission, helping a community remember its better self. His last thought before sleep claimed him was a line from his Naval Special Warfare oath. I do not advertise the nature of my work, nor seek recognition for my actions. For 30 years, that code had defined his service. Now, ironically, recognition had found him anyway, thrust him into a spotlight he'd spent a lifetime avoiding. The question was, what would he do with that unwanted platform now that it had been forced upon him? The answer would come sooner than he expected. At 3:17 a.m., William's security system chimed softly, alerting him to movement on his property. Fully awake instantly, he checked the security feed on his phone. A single figure approached his front door, hand raised to knock. Eleanor Patterson, the mayor's wife, her face streaked with tears. And behind her, parking at the curb, a black SUV with federal government plates. The night wasn't over yet. The knock at William's door at 3:17 a.m. carried the unmistakable urgency of crisis. He moved with the deliberate efficiency of a man who had responded to countless midnight emergencies during his military career. No wasted motion, no hesitation. Weapons secured but accessible. Lights activated strategically rather than flooding the house. A quick glance at security feeds confirming Eleanor Patterson's tear-stained face and the government vehicle behind her. He opened the door, keeping his body partially shielded by the frame from old habit. "Mrs. Patterson, this is unexpected." "I'm sorry for the hour." Eleanor's voice trembled despite her evident effort to maintain composure. "Thomas is dead." William's expression remained neutral, but he stepped back, opening the door fully. "Come inside." As Eleanor entered, William noticed a woman in a dark suit emerging from the government SUV, hanging back at a respectful distance. Agent Ramsey maintaining surveillance. He guided Eleanor to the living room where she sank onto the sofa, her elegant composure crumbling further. "What happened?" William asked, his tone gentle but direct. "They're calling it suicide. He used his service pistol in his study." Eleanor's hands twisted together. "I found him an hour ago. The FBI agents are still there." William processed this development, its implications rippling outward like concentric circles from a stone dropped in still water. "I'm sorry," he said simply. Eleanor looked up, her eyes sharp despite her distress. "Don't be." "Thomas chose his path, but that's not why I'm here. Before he did it, he sent me a text. One word, evidence. When I checked his study after finding him, his safe was open. Empty. You believe someone took whatever was inside?" "I know they did. Thomas kept meticulous records of everything. Insurance, he called it. Details of every development deal, every payoff, every connection." She leaned forward. "Names that would shock you. People far beyond Millbrook." William remained still, listening with the patience of a man trained to extract critical information from emotional situations. "The FBI agents searching the house won't find anything," Eleanor continued, "because Thomas kept his real insurance elsewhere. A duplicate set of everything." She reached into her purse and withdrew a small external hard drive. "He gave this to me 6 months ago. Said if anything ever happened to him, I should decide what to do with it." William made no move to take the device. "Why bring this to me? Why not Agent Ramsey or the FBI directly?" "Because I don't know who to trust." Eleanor's composure briefly returned a glimpse of the intelligence operative she had once been. This goes beyond corrupt small-town officials and greedy developers. Thomas was connected to people in state government federal agencies, the kind of people who might have influence over investigations. "And you believe I'm trustworthy. I believe you have no agenda beyond justice, no political aspirations, no financial interests." She placed the drive on the coffee table between them. "And you have a direct line to someone who can ensure this information reaches the right people." William glanced at the drive, but didn't touch it. "Sarah has recused herself from this investigation. I'm not asking for special treatment. I'm asking for protection of evidence that powerful people would prefer disappeared." Eleanor stood smoothing her skirt with trembling hands. "Make your own decision. But remember, Thomas didn't kill himself because of a small-town development scheme being exposed. He killed himself because he feared what would happen when his connections to much bigger players came to light." After Eleanor left, William sat alone in the quiet house contemplating the hard drive on his coffee table. Years of intelligence work had taught him to recognize genuine fear. Eleanor Patterson had been terrified, not of immediate physical danger, but of invisible forces that could reach into small-town America with lethal consequence. William reached for his phone, then hesitated. This situation required careful handling. If Eleanor's claims were accurate, digital communications might be compromised. Instead, He secured the drive in his personal safe, then returned to the living room just as his doorbell rang. Agent Ramsey stood on the porch, expression grim. "Mr. Stevens, may I come in?" William nodded, leading her to the kitchen where he started brewing coffee. Neither spoke until he placed a steaming mug before her. "Mayor Thompson is dead," Ramsey said finally. "Gunshot wound to the head. Preliminary assessment indicates suicide. Mrs. Patterson informed me. I saw her leaving. What did she want at this hour?" William considered his response carefully. "To notify me personally. We had interactions at community events before the diner incident." The partial truth hung between them. Ramsey studied his face, her training allowing her to recognize the deliberate omission. "Mr. Stevens, if Mrs. Patterson shared information relevant to our investigation, you'll have my full cooperation," William interrupted smoothly. "But I need to verify certain matters first. Given recent events, I believe caution is warranted." Ramsey nodded slowly. "Thompson's death complicates our case considerably. He was preparing to cooperate in exchange for leniency. Now our primary witness is gone." "Convenient timing." "Very." Ramsey sipped her coffee. "The weapon was his. Gunshot residue on his hand. No signs of struggle. Classic suicide profile. But you have doubts. Let's just say I'm maintaining an open mind about all possibilities." She set down her mug. "Security around remaining witnesses has been increased. Marcus Johnson has been moved to a secure location pending his testimony. Maria Santos and Tommy Carter have been offered temporary relocation." William absorbed this information silently. The escalation implied federal authorities shared Eleanor's concerns about wider connections. What happens now? Investigation continues, focusing on financial links between local officials and the development group. Ramsey stood. "Get some rest, Mr. Stevens. The next few days will be eventful." After Ramsey departed, William knew sleep would be impossible. Dawn was approaching, painting the sky with pale golden light as he stood on his porch watching the Millbrook River flow steadily below his property. The view that had made his land so valuable to developers. The view that had inadvertently placed him at the center of a conspiracy that had now claimed its first life. His contemplation was interrupted by his phone ringing. Sarah's name appeared on the screen. "Dad!" Her voice carried the tension of a senior official managing a sensitive situation. "Are you all right?" "I'm fine. I assume you've heard about Mayor Thompson." "Yes, I've been briefed." The careful phrasing confirmed William's suspicion that she was speaking on an official line, not a private one. "There's concern about potential escalation. I'd like you to consider temporary relocation to a secure facility." "Sarah," William replied calmly, "we both know I'm not leaving my home." A pause, then her voice softened slightly. "Stubborn as always. At least accept additional security." "I have adequate protection." William thought of the veterans who had organized their own surveillance rotation, supplementing the FBI presence. "Focus on Maria and Tommy. They're more vulnerable." "Already addressed." "I need to go, Dad. Stay alert." She hesitated, then added, "I love you." "Love you too, honey." As morning fully arrived, Millbrook transformed into a media circus. News vans lined Main Street. Reporters delivered breathless updates about Mayor Thompson's apparent suicide amid corruption allegations, and satellite trucks broadcast live feeds to national networks. The small town had become a symbol for rural American tensions, corrupt development practices, and the power of viral videos to trigger federal investigations. At 9:00 a.m., William received a text from Fire Chief Rodriguez. "Emergency Town Council meeting called for noon. Acting Mayor Jenkins presiding. Public invited." You should attend. William considered declining, but recognized the importance of maintaining visibility. His presence would serve as a reminder that intimidation had failed. He replied simply, "I'll be there." Before leaving for the meeting, William made one critical decision. He contacted Agent Ramsey requesting a secure meeting with her superior and the U.S. attorney assigned to the case. "There's evidence you should examine," he explained vaguely. "Best discussed in person." At the town hall, William found the meeting room already packed when he arrived. Acting Mayor Jenkins, formerly the senior council member, looked uncomfortable on the dais where Thompson had presided for 2 decades. Beside him sat the town attorney, several visibly nervous council members, and Sheriff Hayes, whose expression suggested she was calculating political survival odds. William took a seat in the middle of the room, acknowledging supportive nods from community members. Maria Santos and Tommy Carter sat nearby, the young journalist's camera recording steadily. Agent Mendoza blended into the crowd, maintaining discreet surveillance. Acting Mayor Jenkins called the meeting to order with a shaky voice. "In light of recent tragic events, this emergency session will address immediate governance concerns and investigation updates." What followed was a carefully choreographed attempt at damage control. Jenkins expressed shock and sadness at Thompson's death, praised his decades of service, and announced a review of all development contracts approved during Thompson's administration. Sheriff Hayes provided a sanitized investigation update, emphasizing her department's full cooperation with federal authorities. The town attorney outlined procedures for special elections to replace Thompson permanently, suggesting a date 3 months hence. Each statement carefully avoided mentioning William Stevens, the assault at Murphy's Diner, or the intimidation campaign against newcomers. When public comments began, the atmosphere shifted dramatically. Residents stepped forward with personal accounts of harassment tied to development interests. A middle-aged teacher described being pressured to sell her riverside property. An elderly couple recounted threatening phone calls after refusing a buyout offer. A business owner explained how town inspections suddenly intensified after he publicly questioned a zoning change. Each story added another piece to the pattern, revealing systematic abuse of power extending throughout Thompson's administration. William listened silently, recognizing the catharsis happening before him. Millbrook was purging its secrets, confronting its complicity, in allowing intimidation to become governance. When his turn to speak arrived, William approached the microphone with military bearing. The room quieted immediately, cameras focusing attention absolute. "I moved to Millbrook, seeking community," he began quietly. "What I found instead was division. Insiders versus outsiders. Old versus new. Those who belong versus those who don't." He surveyed the room slowly, making eye contact with council members who shifted uncomfortably. Mayor Thompson's death is a tragedy regardless of circumstances. But greater tragedy would be failing to learn from this moment. Millbrook stands at a crossroads. One path continues division suspicion, using fear as a weapon against change. The other path requires courage, the courage to acknowledge wrongs, to rebuild trust, to recognize that community isn't defined by how long you've lived somewhere, but by shared commitment to treating each other with dignity. William touched the Purple Heart on his cardigan. "I didn't earn this fighting for a divided America. I earned it alongside men and women who came from every background, every state, every belief system. What united us wasn't sameness. It was purpose, commitment to something larger than ourselves." He turned directly to Acting Mayor Jenkins. "Millbrook deserves leadership worthy of its people. Leadership that unites rather than divides. Leadership that serves all residents, not just those with the right connections or history. The question isn't whether change comes to Millbrook. Change always comes. The question is whether Millbrook faces change with fear or courage." William returned to his seat amid profound silence, broken eventually by spontaneous applause. Not from everyone. Several council members remained stone-faced, and Sheriff Hayes studied her hands, but from enough community members to signal shifting sentiment. After the meeting adjourned, William found himself surrounded by residents wanting to share their stories, express support, or simply shake his hand. The impromptu gathering continued outside Town Hall, where news cameras captured the community's emerging solidarity. While speaking with an elderly couple who had experienced intimidation after refusing to sell their farm, William noticed a black SUV pulling up nearby. Agent Ramsey emerged, accompanied by a distinguished older man in an immaculate suit. "Mr. Stevens," Ramsey approached. This is Richard Harrington, U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District. He'd like to speak with you." William excused himself from the couple and followed Ramsey and Harrington to a quieter area away from cameras. "Mr. Stevens," Harrington began without preamble, "Agent Ramsey indicates you have evidence relevant to our investigation." William studied the prosecutor carefully. "Potentially significant evidence that extends beyond Millbrook. I needed to assess your commitment to following evidence wherever it leads, regardless of political connections." Harrington's expression hardened slightly. "I've prosecuted 3 congressmen, a federal judge, and a governor's chief of staff during my career. Political connections don't concern me. Justice does." William nodded, satisfied. "Then we should continue this conversation privately." An hour later, they gathered in William's living room. Present were Harrington Ramsey and a Justice Department cybersecurity specialist introduced only as Clark. William retrieved Eleanor's hard drive from his safe and placed it on the coffee table. "Mayor Thompson's wife brought this to me last night. She claims it contains evidence of connections between the Millbrook development scheme and much larger players, state officials, possibly federal." Harrington raised an eyebrow. "Why bring it to you rather than directly to law enforcement?" She feared the information might be suppressed by those with influence over investigations. She believed I had both the integrity and the connections to ensure it reached the right people. Harrington nodded to Clark, who connected the drive to a specialized laptop with enhanced security features. As files appeared on screen, the room grew silent. Spreadsheets documenting payments to officials at multiple levels of government. Emails between Thompson and state regulatory authorities arranging inspection flexibility for development partners. Communications with federal agency staff coordinating grant approvals tied to the Riverfront project. Most significantly, detailed records of a sophisticated money laundering operation using rural development projects across 5 states to clean proceeds from unspecified criminal enterprises. Millbrook was merely one node in a network extending throughout the region. "This is," Harrington started. "Explosive," Ramsey finished, "and potentially explains Thompson's suicide. He knew this would eventually surface." "Or someone made certain he couldn't testify," William suggested quietly. Clark continued examining files. "There's evidence here implicating at least 2 state senators, a regional EPA director, and several high-level staffers in the Department of Housing and Urban Development." Harrington's expression had transformed to one of grim determination. "This investigation just expanded significantly. We'll need to coordinate with multiple jurisdictions, possibly a federal task force." William leaned forward. "What about security for witnesses? If this extends as far as it appears, Maria, Tommy, and the others are at greater risk than previously assessed." "Agreed," Ramsey said immediately. "We should implement protective protocols consistent with organized crime investigations, not just local corruption." As they discussed security arrangements, William considered the implications of Thompson's evidence. What had begun as a personal assault in a small-town diner had expanded to reveal systematic corruption reaching into federal agencies. The enemies were no longer just local bullies like Marcus Johnson, but potentially powerful officials with resources to eliminate threats. After the federal officials departed with the hard drive, William sat alone on his porch, watching evening descend over the Millbrook River. His military instincts recognized the calm before combat, the deceptive stillness preceding action. Something was coming. Someone would move to contain the damage Thompson's evidence threatened. His phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Veterans Network activated. Full perimeter coverage established. Rest easy, Master Chief. William smiled slightly. Jack Nelson's team of retired military personnel had expanded their protection detail. Their presence wouldn't stop a determined professional, but it would complicate any operation against him or other witnesses. As darkness fell, William's security system chimed, alerting him to a vehicle approaching. The camera showed Fire Chief Rodriguez's truck parking in the driveway. William met him at the door. "Miguel, what brings you by this late?" Rodriguez looked exhausted, his uniform rumpled from a long day. "Information you should know. Sheriff Hayes is resigning tomorrow. Effective immediately." William raised an eyebrow. Interesting timing. She received a phone call after today's council meeting. I overheard part of it. Someone mentioned containment and damage limitation. After that, she started shredding documents. "You reported this to Agent Ramsey." Rodriguez nodded. "She's obtained an emergency preservation order for all department records. FBI agents are securing the evidence now." William invited Rodriguez inside where the fire chief declined coffee but accepted water. They sat in the kitchen speaking quietly. "There's something else," Rodriguez continued. "I found financial records in the fire department's joint emergency planning files. Documentation of unusual equipment purchases for the sheriff's department. Items never logged in official inventories." "What kind of equipment?" "Surveillance gear, high-end stuff, way beyond normal law enforcement needs for a town this size." William processed this information. They were monitoring more than just development targets. And exactly, I think Thompson was gathering leverage on everyone. Business leaders, council members, county officials, insurance against betrayal. After Rodriguez departed, William performed a security sweep of his property. Old habits from operational days that now seemed prescient rather than paranoid. Satisfied with external security, he checked his phone to find a message from Sarah. "Task force established. Protection details expanded for all witnesses. Call me on secure line tomorrow." The following morning brought news that rocked Millbrook further. Sheriff Hayes had indeed resigned, but not before allegedly attempting to remove files from department servers. The FBI had intercepted this effort, resulting in her arrest on federal evidence tampering charges. Simultaneously, state police announced investigations into 3 neighboring counties where similar development schemes had emerged. National media reported that a multi-jurisdictional task force was examining potential connections between rural development projects and organized crime money laundering operations throughout the region. William maintained his regular routine despite the chaos, walking downtown for coffee at the newly reopened Murphy's Diner, now under Maria's management. The establishment had become something of a community gathering point, where residents shared information and processed the rapidly evolving situation. As William sipped his coffee, Maria approached his table. "You've started quite the revolution, Mr. Stevens." "Not my intention," he replied with a slight smile. "I just wanted peaceful retirement." "Some people don't get to choose their missions," she said thoughtfully. "Sometimes the mission chooses them." The wisdom in her young voice reminded William of conversations with junior officers during his service years. "How are you holding up with all this attention?" Better now that the FBI explained why ICE suddenly questioned my citizenship. Maria's expression hardened. Thompson had connections in immigration enforcement. Used them to intimidate people like me. That system is being investigated now, too. Their conversation was interrupted by Tommy Carter rushing into the diner, camera in hand, expression excited. "Mr. Stevens, Maria, you need to see this." He placed his laptop on the table, showing a live news feed from the county courthouse. Federal agents were escorting James Wilson, the Philadelphia developer, and 2 state senators in handcuffs toward waiting vehicles. The chyron below read, "Breaking arrests in multi-state corruption investigation." The diner fell silent as patrons gathered to watch. The reporter explained that early morning raids had occurred simultaneously across 5 states, targeting officials and business leaders implicated in a massive fraud and money laundering scheme disguised as rural development projects. "It's happening," Maria whispered. "They're actually taking down the entire network." William watched silently, recognizing the operational signature of a meticulously planned federal operation. This hadn't been assembled overnight. Thompson's evidence had accelerated an investigation already underway, providing the final connections needed to justify coordinated action. His phone buzzed with a text from Agent Ramsey. 47 arrests so far. More coming. Your safety remains priority. Stay alert." Over the next 3 days, Millbrook experienced the disorienting sensation of a small town thrust onto the national stage. News teams conducted interviews on street corners. FBI agents continued gathering evidence from municipal offices. State investigators audited development contracts. Residents discovered their community was merely one example of a sophisticated scheme repeated in small towns across multiple states. Through it all, William maintained his dignity and routine, declining most interview requests, but remaining visible in the community. His presence served as reassurance that Millbrook would survive this upheaval. On the 4th morning after the coordinated arrests, William received an unexpected call from Agent Ramsey. "Mr. Stevens, we need your assistance with a sensitive matter. Would you be willing to meet with Marcus Johnson? He's specifically requested to speak with you before finalizing his cooperation agreement." William considered the request carefully. "May I ask why?" He wouldn't specify but indicated it was personal rather than evidential. "Entirely your decision. He's currently in protective custody at a secure location outside Millbrook." After a moment's reflection, William agreed. "Arrange the meeting. I'll hear what he has to say." That afternoon, a bureau vehicle transported William to a nondescript hotel 30 miles from Millbrook, converted temporarily into a secure witness facility. He was escorted to a small conference room where Marcus Johnson waited, supervised by Agent Mendoza. Marcus looked diminished from their last encounter. Thinner, unshaven shoulders hunched beneath a plain gray sweatshirt. He stood awkwardly when William entered. "Mr. Stevens, thank you for coming." William nodded, taking the seat across from him. Mendoza positioned himself near the door, providing both security and privacy. "Agent Ramsey said you wanted to speak with me," William said neutrally. Marcus stared at his hands for several moments before raising his eyes. "I wanted to apologize. Properly, not through lawyers or statements. Face to face." William remained silent, allowing the younger man space to continue. "What I did to you at the diner," Marcus struggled visibly. "It wasn't just wrong. It was... I've been trying to understand why I did it. Why I became the kind of person who would assault an elderly man just because someone told me he didn't belong." "And have you reached any conclusions?" William asked quietly. "Fear, I think. Fear of change, of losing what little I had left." Marcus's voice strengthened slightly. My grandfather built half the houses in Millbrook. My father worked the mill for 30 years before they shut it down, moved production overseas. I watched this town dying slowly. Then developers arrived promising revival, but only if we cleared out certain obstacles, made it easier to acquire key properties. Including mine, Marcus nodded. Yours most of all. The riverfront access made it essential to their hotel plans. He hesitated. Mayor Thompson convinced us it was for the greater good, that sometimes you have to be tough to protect what matters. I believed him. And he did, William acknowledged. That's how corruption functions, by wrapping itself in noble purposes. I've agreed to testify against everyone involved, Marcus continued. Not for leniency, though I'll accept whatever they offer, but because I need to set things right, starting with you. William studied the younger man, carefully assessing his sincerity. Decades of intelligence work had taught him to recognize authentic remorse. Why did you really ask to see me, Marcus? Marcus looked surprised. Then his expression softened into reluctant admiration. They said you were perceptive. He straightened slightly. I wanted to tell you that I'm refusing witness protection after my testimony, coming back to Millbrook to face whatever comes next. That could be dangerous. Many people implicated in this conspiracy remain at large. I know, but running away would be another form of cowardice. I attacked you because I thought you didn't belong. The truth is, I need to earn my own belonging again, rebuild trust with the community I damaged. William nodded slowly, understanding the complex blend of atonement and courage in Marcus's decision. Redemption isn't found in hiding, but it requires more than just facing consequences. It demands active restoration. That's what I'm hoping to do, if I'm allowed the chance. As their meeting concluded, William extended his hand across the table. Marcus looked startled, then accepted the handshake with visible emotion. I don't forgive you yet, Marcus, William said calmly. That will depend on your actions moving forward. But I acknowledge your courage in choosing this path. Returning to Millbrook that evening, William found a message waiting from Agent Ramsey, requesting his presence at a task force briefing the following morning. The message included a secure facility address in the county seat and specified that Sarah would be attending virtually in her official capacity. The briefing room contained an assemblage of federal and state authorities when William arrived. Agent Ramsey introduced him to key officials, including Richard Harrington, the U.S. Attorney, and commanders from various law enforcement agencies. At precisely 10 Sudru AM screens activated showing Sarah Stevens in her formal capacity as Director of Homeland Security. Her professional demeanor revealed nothing of their personal relationship as she addressed the gathering. This briefing will outline Operation Clean Slate, the coordinated response to corruption networks identified through the Millbrook investigation. For those not yet briefed, I've recused myself from operational decisions regarding Millbrook specifically, but maintain oversight of broader national security implications. What followed was a comprehensive presentation revealing the full scope of corruption uncovered. The Millbrook development scheme had been replicated in dozens of small towns across 5 states, creating a sophisticated money laundering operation, processing millions in illicit funds through seemingly legitimate rural development projects. Thompson's evidence, combined with existing federal investigations, had exposed connections to organized crime, corrupt officials at multiple government levels, and international money movements that triggered national security concerns. We've executed 47 arrests thus far, Harrington explained. Anticipate approximately 30 more as evidence develops. The corruption network appears to have been operating for approximately 8 years, expanding systematically through rural communities facing economic challenges. As the briefing continued, William observed the meticulous professionalism of the assembled team. This wasn't just a corruption case anymore. It had evolved into a major criminal enterprise investigation with national security dimensions. After the formal presentation concluded, Sarah addressed William directly for the first time. "Mr. Stevens, on behalf of the task force, I want to express appreciation for your cooperation. Your actions helped expose a significant threat to governmental integrity." William nodded, maintaining the professional distance her position required. "I'm simply a citizen who expected better from his government director Stevens." A ghost of a smile touched Sarah's lips at his formality. "The task force has one additional request. As witnesses are prepared for upcoming prosecutions, your perspective would be valuable in community impact assessments. Would you be willing to consult in that capacity?" "I would," William agreed, "with one condition: that Millbrook receives support for rebuilding legitimate governance structures after this investigation concludes." "Already incorporated in the recovery plan," Harrington interjected. "Federal resources will assist with municipal governance rehabilitation in all affected communities." As the meeting adjourned, Sarah remained on screen while others departed. When only William and Agent Ramsey remained, Sarah's professional facade softened slightly. "Dad, are you really okay?" No diplomatic answers. William smiled. "I'm fine, Sarah. Better than fine, actually. There's purpose in this work that reminds me of the best parts of my service years." "You were supposed to be enjoying quiet retirement, not helping dismantle criminal conspiracies." "Life rarely follows our plans. You of all people should know that." After the call ended, Ramsey escorted William from the facility. "Your daughter is exceptionally professional," she commented. "No one would guess your relationship from that meeting." "She was raised to understand duty," William replied simply. "Personal connections never compromise professional responsibilities." The following weeks brought dramatic transformations to Millbrook. An interim administration was established under state supervision. FBI auditors examined every municipal contract and financial transaction from Thompson's tenure. Community forums addressed governance reforms and development alternatives that would serve all residents rather than outside interests. Throughout this period, William maintained his center of calm amidst the storm. His home became an informal gathering place for residents seeking perspective on the changes sweeping their town. Veterans from surrounding communities continued their volunteer security patrols, gradually transitioning from protection to community service. 6 weeks after Thompson's suicide, Millbrook held a special election for mayor. To widespread surprise, Maria Santos announced her candidacy, running on a platform of transparency, inclusive governance, and sustainable development that preserved the town's character while embracing necessary change. The evening before the election, Maria visited William's home seeking last-minute advice. They sat on his porch overlooking the river that had made his property so valuable to corrupt developers. "I never planned to enter politics," Maria admitted. "My ambition was running my own restaurant someday." "Life rarely follows our plans," William replied with a slight smile. "Sometimes greater purposes find us when we least expect them." "Do you think Millbrook is ready for a young Latina mayor?" William considered this thoughtfully. "Millbrook is ready for honest leadership that serves everyone, not just the connected few. Your background matters less than your commitment to that principle." "If I win, would you consider chairing the Citizens Oversight Committee? We need someone with absolute integrity to help rebuild trust in local government." William nodded slowly. "I would be honored." The following day, Millbrook elected Maria Santos as its youngest mayor in history, by a narrow but decisive margin. Her first official act was establishing the Citizens Oversight Committee with William as its chair. 3 months after the viral video that had thrust Millbrook into national attention, the town hosted a community reconciliation event. Residents gathered in the park beside the river, sharing food and conversation across divisions that had once seemed unbridgeable. William observed from a quiet corner, content to watch the community healing without inserting himself into the spotlight. His attention was drawn to a familiar figure approaching hesitantly from the parking area. Marcus Johnson, recently released after providing extensive testimony to federal prosecutors. Conversations quieted as Marcus walked through the gathering. Some residents turned away. Others watched warily. He continued until he reached the center of the park, where Mayor Santos stood with town council members. "Madam Mayor," Marcus said, his voice carrying in the sudden silence, "I've come to request permission to address our community." Maria studied him carefully, then nodded. "Proceed, Mr. Johnson." Marcus turned to face his neighbors, squaring his shoulders despite obvious nervousness. "Most of you know what I did, how I participated in efforts to intimidate people, to drive out those considered outsiders, to protect what we thought was our town from change." He paused, gathering courage. "I was wrong. We were all wrong. Millbrook doesn't belong to any faction or group. It belongs to everyone who chooses to make it home, who contributes to its well-being, who treats others with the dignity everyone deserves." Another pause. "I can't undo the harm I caused, but I can spend the rest of my life working to rebuild what we damaged together. Starting today, I'm establishing a community restoration fund with my personal savings. The first project will be repairing homes of residents targeted for intimidation during Thompson's administration." A murmur ran through the crowd. Marcus continued, his voice stronger. "I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it yet. But I am asking for the opportunity to demonstrate through actions, not just words, that people can change. That Millbrook can change for the better." As Marcus finished speaking, the crowd remained silent. Then William Stevens stood from his corner seat and walked deliberately toward Marcus. Every eye followed his movement. He stopped directly before the younger man. "Mr. Johnson," William said, his voice carrying clearly, "your commitment to restoration is noted and appreciated. The Oversight Committee would welcome your participation in community rebuilding efforts." A simple statement, not forgiveness, but opportunity. William extended his hand. After a moment's hesitation, Marcus accepted it. The handshake was brief, formal, but symbolically powerful. Gradually, conversations resumed around them. The moment passed without fanfare, but its significance registered with everyone present. Millbrook was choosing reconciliation over retribution, restoration over revenge. As evening approached, William found a quiet moment with Mayor Santos near the riverbank. "Impressive leadership today," he commented. "I had a good example to follow," she replied with a smile. "The man who never sought the spotlight, but showed us all what dignity looks like under pressure." William shook his head slightly. "I just happened to be in the right place at the wrong time." "Or exactly where you needed to be." Maria gazed across the gathering. "Look at them, Mr. Stevens. 3 months ago, this town was tearing itself apart. Now we're rebuilding together." William followed her gaze, noting the diverse groupings forming naturally throughout the park. Longtime residents conversing with newcomers, young families alongside elderly couples, the artificial divisions that had defined Millbrook slowly dissolving. His phone vibrated in his pocket. A text from Sarah. "Operation Clean Slate. Final phase initiated. 32 additional arrests across 3 states. Senior officials at DOJ, HUD, EPA. Network is completely dismantled. You should be proud, Dad." It started with you refusing to be intimidated. William smiled slightly, returning the phone to his pocket without responding. He didn't need recognition for doing what was right. Never had. As sunset painted the sky in brilliant oranges and purples, William walked home along the river path. He stopped at the overlook where his property offered its most spectacular view, the vista that developers had coveted for their hotel project. Jack Nelson approached, standing beside him in companionable silence for several minutes before speaking. "Beautiful evening, Master Chief." "Indeed, it is, Sergeant Major. The Veterans Network is transitioning to community service projects. Thought you'd want to know. Home repairs for elderly residents, youth mentoring, that sort of thing." William nodded approvingly. "Good men finding new missions, as it should be." Nelson glanced sideways at him. "And what about you found your new mission here in Millbrook?" William considered the question seriously. "Perhaps I have. Not the mission I expected, but apparently the one I needed." The two veterans stood together, watching darkness settle over the river town that had found its way back to its better self. A town where an elderly man had refused intimidation, a community had faced its demons, and justice had prevailed against powerful opposition. In the growing twilight, William Stevens touched the Purple Heart on his cardigan. The medal commemorated physical wounds received in service to his country. But perhaps his greatest service had come decades later in standing firm against corruption that threatened American communities from within. Not all battles required weapons. Sometimes the greatest courage was simply refusing to be silenced, refusing to be driven away, refusing to accept that some belonged while others did not. As stars appeared above Millbrook, William Stevens walked the final distance home at peace, with the unexpected final mission that had found him in the quiet retirement he had sought. Not a warrior's mission this time, but a citizen's, equally vital to the nation he had served all his life. He climbed the steps to his porch, turned to look once more at the community lights reflecting on the river below, and smiled. Honor and justice. In the end, they had prevailed, as they must if America was to remain the nation worthy of the sacrifices made to protect it.